Good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Larkins, president of Suna Solutions. Thanks for joining us this morning. Joining me on the panel this morning will be three folks from our Talent Solutions group. What we want to do is share with you some of the emerging trends that we're seeing in the staffing industry. Before I hand it off for individual introductions, a couple things. Throughout the presentation today, Noelle, our marketing director, will be sending out some interactive poll questions. So look for those and please participate. If you have any questions with regard to content or anything outside of that, please feel free and drop that into the chat. Before I hand it off to the others, a little bit about my background. I've been in the staffing industry about 30 years, and over half that time has been really focused on working closely with clients to develop strategic solutions focused on their contingent workforce.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. My name is Kelly Mills. I'm the Client Services Manager here at Suna. I have about 15 years of staffing industry experience with 7 years of MSP experience. I currently oversee oversee all of the client program specialists and the MSP coordinators here at Suna who handle the full hiring cycle of the MSP program.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kyle Anderson. And I've been with Suna over 8.5 years and sit here in San Diego. I'm the regional manager of Total Talent Solutions and have over 12 years of staffing experience. I've also been teaching the talent acquisition class for the HR certificate program at a California State University for the last 6 years. And I'm responsible just for partnering with companies and designing solutions like we're going to cover today.
And hi, my name is Tyler Cook, Regional Manager of Total Talent Solutions as well. I head our Seattle, Washington office operations, and I've been in the staffing industry for just about 7 years now. And my day-to-day consists of partnering with clients to design MSPs and offer total talent solutions to help them gain the talent they need.
What is an MSP?
What is an MSP? An MSP stands for a managed service provider. The definition of an MSP is an outsourced third-party company that manages the business's staffing services and workforce, along with assuming the responsibility of improving operations. The MSP works directly with the business on open requisitions, who then partners with the other third-party suppliers to help source the find talent needed to fill the business's requisitions and needs. By signing with an MSP, this allows the business to take advantage of the capabilities and the experience the third-party company offers while avoiding direct costs of managing the program themselves. So let's simplify the concept. At the top, we have the hiring managers at the business who partner with the MSP account managers, who will then partner with the approved vendor suppliers part of the program. By partnering with an MSP, it opens the business to national talent sourcing, vendor sourcing, screening, and selection, vendor management and compliance. The MSP requires each vendor to sign an agreement to be approved to work with the business, and the MSP ensures each vendor is compliant as well. On-site resources, automated timekeeping, consolidated invoicing, and supplier remittance through a VMS portal specific to the business needs, and risk mitigation. The MSP takes care of all of these things and items for the business.
On to our first poll question. What percentage of companies, 1,000 plus employees, have an established MSP? All right, we'll end this one.
The answer is 62%. Per the Staffing Industry Analyst Workforce Buyer Summary, reported adoption of MSP programs from companies with more than 1,000 employees has grown from 40% in 2009 to 62% in 2020. The share of respondents using a vendor management system showed an even more marked climb, with 82% of programs having one in place in 2019 compared to 51% a decade prior. And then the world was hit by COVID-19. The resulting health and economic crisis is accelerating a push towards increased collaboration and communication for all in the talent supply chain.
What are the benefits of an MSP?
Great. So you're thinking of implementing an MSP and obviously you want to know kind of more about the benefits, right? So implementing an MSP will open up a lot of operational benefits. The procurement of vendors and talent being centralized in one place is going to standardize both contract terms and your onboarding workflows. Partnering with an MSP ensures that you're going to stay up to date with industry best practices from both real program experience and professional staffing organizations like Staffing Industry Analysts and ASA, American Staffing Association. Also partnering with an established provider will give you the ability to tap into their existing vendor network. And that's going to help you fill any talent voids or replace non-compliant or poor performing vendors for any skill set gaps you may have. The single point of contact model is going to streamline all of your vendor, hiring manager, and contractor communications through one primary point of contact. And there's an escalation hierarchy to eliminate any of the duplicative work, multiple emails, things like that. Not only is this going to create an easy to follow workflow, but it's also going to ensure compliance and help with change management as personnel enter and exit your organization. These increased efficiencies are going to allow your vendors to emerge as top performers, and that talent is going to naturally cascade down throughout your organization. Finally, housing all of this non-employee engagement data in one location is going to give you total optics to your contingent workforce. And this will be helpful in providing reportable analytics across a lot of data points that you can customize. And then you can use those for business strategic business decision making. So this isn't just going to affect one department, it's going to cascade across everybody, and there's a lot of benefits. So who's going to care? Within the human resources department, you're going to see all of your non-employee engagements, again, housed in one location with reportable analytics and customized workflows. Your procurement team is going to enjoy the standardized agreements and creative pricing that's going to pave way for volume rebates, discounts, 10-year drops, creative pricing that will save you money in the long run. Your finance team is going to be happy with the consolidated invoice options. It's going to eliminate reconciliation headaches. And they'll also be happy to know that they're in the approval process for budget approvals and any change order requests and extensions. And finally, your IT and legal team are going to be a big fan as well. Your IT team is going to be happy that your MSP technology integrates well with your tech stack. They're also going to have a lot more tracking around any of those hard assets like laptops and monitors, because that's all tracked within the program. And then your legal team is going to be happy because the MSP holds agreements directly with the vendors, and that's going to mitigate a lot of risk and ensure vendor compliance with onboarding policy. Okay, so here we have a high-level workflow and some animations to showcase the requisition to check process throughout the MSP. So first, we have the initial talent requirement request that is sent to the Suna program manager. The request follows the appropriate approval chain, and then those vetted requisitions are distributed to the approved vendor partners. The approved vendor partners submit qualified candidates to the MSP, where the Suna program manager reviews and then releases a shortlisted candidate pool to the vendor, to the client to review. From there, the student program manager will work within the system and directly with your hiring manager's calendars to coordinate all interviews. And then once a candidate selection is made, the MSP will work with the associated vendor to ensure onboarding compliance for that contractor. The MSP will coordinate across all parties to ensure that requisitions and assignments are properly managed. And then once timekeeping is captured and approved, the MSP then sends one consolidated invoice encompassing all contractor engagements to you for ease of upload. And then having all this centralized activity allows for a robust reporting analytics. And then finally, the MSP will remit payment directly to the approved vendor partners, once again, cutting down on some administrative burdens. All right, so these, you can see here, this graphic is showcasing some of the factors that clients take into consideration when choosing to implement an MSP. While the complexity and breadth of the MSP continues to increase as the traditional scope expands beyond just supplier management, you can see there's a lot of options for clients to look at here. So 78% of the buyers you can see are using MSPs for standalone supplier management. Just below that, we have 71% of MSPs looking for worker compliance. That's also tying in vendor compliance to note. And you can see there's a lot of additional factors that you can take into consideration. And I like to make note that it's significant that in almost every case that we've experienced, it's not one factor that's the driving force behind this. It's a multitude of multiple factors, easing pain points to make the operations a little smoother.
We have another poll question. What is the average % of hard cost savings a company can receive by implementing an MSP? Lots of 15%, it looks like.
All right, so the average cost savings is 15%. That's an exciting number, right? It's 15% of your total staffing spend you get to save instantly. So where does that come from? You know, this number is derived from a multitude of factors, but reducing the overall cost of staffing through rate standardization and creating consistency in that hiring process is going to help impact the bottom line. There's also additional operational efficiencies that are, client specific, unique to workflows and policies that will also become more streamlined and help impact that bottom line. If a vendor funded model is implemented, the MSP can absorb steep technology and implementation costs, and that's going to save you tens of thousands of dollars right away. And also, depending on your provider, they may offer creative pricing solutions like volume rebates and tenure discounts. And that's going to reward you for increasing the amount of spend going through the program.
What is the staffing vendor's role in an MSP program?
Right. So here you can see we have three options. And in general, there are three popular types of MSPs. In a vendor neutral program, the MSP is going to release the requisition to all the vendors at the same time. This will foster an equal opportunity for all vendors to work on their requisition, creating a competitive program. In a vendor funded or vendor preferred program, there is a preferred vendor who typically receives the approved requisitions in advance to distributing them to the rest of the vendor pool. There are usually some basic service level agreements or metrics behind the timing and releasing of those requisitions to the additional vendors. And then finally, there's the tiered vendor program, in which aspects of both vendor neutral and vendor preferred programs are incorporated. This is usually the most recommended model for small and mid-sized organizations, and in our opinion, it typically generates the best quality of talent.
Another poll question. What is the most common vendor model for MSPs?
Nice. I like the mixed results there. We got you on your toes. So here, coming in at 48% of the entire MSP market, we have a vendor neutral model, and that's going to be your most prevalent MSP model. It is important, I like to note, though, that the majority of the dollars accounted for in this stat are most likely accounted for in large $100 million plus programs. And I mentioned this because if you're running a vendor neutral model on a program with a much smaller volume of spend, it might actually create too much competition, and then your vendors might lose interest or begin to perform poorly because of that. But yeah, so vendor neutral is the most prevalent model in the space right now.
All right, now we'll talk a little bit about the benefits to your vendor partners. And this is probably one of the more popular questions we get is, why would our vendors want to participate in a program? The whole idea behind the MSP program is really to solidify the partnership between your vendors and your end client. So we've seen several cases where maybe there's an agency supporting a specific department, for a company, and previously before the program, that's all they did. Now, when they're in the MSP, they might have access to other requisitions that weren't previously available to them, so they can support multiple departments. We've seen other clients that have only done temporary staffing for end companies, and now within the MSP, they have capabilities to do direct hire, to do temp to hire. So it's just really matching up the capabilities of these agencies to the business needs of the end client. We've also seen an agency that has supported an end client here in SoCal, but they had the capabilities to support them in the Midwest and the East Coast. So the whole idea here, again, is to align both of these entities and making sure that they are cohesive. And a lot of the vendors love this centralized communication. One, the technology is very easy to use. And because they have a program manager that is living and breathing these requisitions and pushing them through the life cycle and the hiring process, you're getting quicker response times, you're getting immediate feedback, whereas a TA manager or even a hiring manager might be in meetings, they're running their business. This person is readily available. And within that technology, they're going to have access to robust feedback. They're going to have performance metrics and coaching opportunities. They're going to have customized reporting that they probably don't have in place currently. And I think this is probably the biggest kind of dangling the carrot in front of them is out of the 150 plus staffing agencies that we manage currently, if we're not managing a current vendor that you utilize and we do roll up an MSP, if they're a top performer for you, we can utilize them in a lot of these other programs. So now when they're enrolling and engaging in a Suna MSP program, they're going to have access to our other programs and increasing their business just by being a top performer for you. And everyone knows about redlining with agreements going back and forth. Once we establish the agreement with a legal team of an end client, typically all the red lines have already been done, but we'll go ahead and help with any contractual or compliance with all the vendors and really roll out the red carpet for them and making sure that they're ready to go for go live date. One thing with the MSP is it's very transparent. We run a full RFI and a market analysis, so the vendors all know that the pricing and the markups are fair and they are competitive, and the end client will probably still save a lot on the cost savings just with the rollout. But again, with the technology and the program manager, everything is expedited. Time and expense is always proven. It just makes everyone's life a lot easier. Now, we take the vendor partner management very seriously. They're our customer just as our end clients who are implementing the MSP are. So just from the start, we will review the whole selection process, review the current vendor partners, take a look at all the agreements, perform that market analysis. And what we found when we started to do a lot of these implementations years ago is our end clients had skills gaps from their vendor pool. So they didn't have a strong agency in manufacturing for life sciences or a strong marketing or creative agency or IT or technical. So what we did is we looked at all the our network and all the vendor partners that we manage in other programs, and we're able to plug in new agencies to fill those skills gaps. So really leveraging our network to make sure that our end clients have an optimized pool. And we're always looking to continually improve that. We'll talk here in a second about rationalization, but the whole management of after we kind of do that initial RFI, we execute all the service level agreements. We handle all the negotiations with the agency partners, handle any issues and resolve them with them, and they really have given us positive feedback about how well that we were able to execute these. We'll also partner with end clients to figure out what does a scorecard look like, what's important to you on recruiting metrics, and then let's figure out what sort of collaborative coaching approach we can take with these end users. It's really well received on all parties, and that just kind of leads into that rationalization and performance. We'll see a scorecard here in a second, but the whole MSP program and the partner management is really to drive performance, right? Making sure that there's no issues on compliance. We set up all the background checks, NDAs, confidentiality agreements, and it's an electronic onboarding packet. So every agency partner has access to it. They didn't have to take the time to set it up, and it's really easy for them to push out when the program goes live. But again, just driving engagement and really having that stewardship within the program is very important. Now here's a sample vendor scorecard. Up at the top, you have sample vendor scorecard. That's where the vendor's name will actually go. So we hold quarterly business reviews with our client companies. We'll cover all of this with each of them and look at the program as a whole, and then dive in individually to how each of the agency partners are performing. It covers a few areas: supplier responsiveness, right? So how many positions did they accept or want to work on? That's the coverage tab. Then we'll take a look at average days to respond. As you can see on this example, if 3 days is expected to see the first candidate and the agency's over 6.5 days, then we can kind of come back to them and say what's going on within the screening process. Maybe we can share other tools or tips that other partners are using to be successful in the program. So it's a collaborative approach because we want them to be successful. If they're not successful, the program's not successful. Then we dive into a little bit more of the worker quality. When they are looking at interviews, hires, or maybe submissions to interviews. And then once they are hired, we're looking at the positive and negative ends. So really diving into that worker quality as well. But we also hold the vendor summits with these vendors quarterly. So we'll go over these figures with them one-on-one. It's not in a big group setting. It's more of that one-on-one coaching and feedback so that they can make improvements where it's needed, or we can highlight them as a top performer in certain areas that they're exceeding. So this is all customized for our client companies' preferences, but it's a great tool to really be transparent and to see how your agency partners are performing.
Is an MSP right for your business?
Now, traditionally, people think of MSP as only large companies. It really is for. I mean, we have really small MSPs, 4 to 5 vendors. We have other, programs that just have a significant amount of vendors. So you really got to figure out what are your strategic initiatives. We've seen a lot of small companies take advantage of the MSP. It's very popular in the mid-sized companies, but the solution hasn't really evolved since we've created it several years ago for the small to mid-sized businesses. A lot of the larger MSP providers won't give attention to these small to mid-sized programs. So there is quite a need, but just figuring out what are you trying to accomplish? Efficiency, other strategic initiatives, alleviate the time it's taking to onboard new vendors or interact on the day-to-day, or is it competitive rates? There's different levers and strategic initiatives people will have, but you can see from small companies to large companies, the MSP solution could be a benefit for all.
Our next poll question. 47% of individual MSP programs manage what amount of annual spend?
And the answer is under 10 million. So alluding to my previous comment, traditionally MSPs are for larger organization. That's kind of been the stigma over the years. And 24% of spend do go to programs that have over $1 billion in total staffing spend. But you're seeing this huge shift. 47% of programs are under $10 million. So although you have these large programs that are still in place, there is a huge push and a huge need for this small to mid-sized market. So again, just figuring out what you're trying to accomplish and then addressing those within an MSP.
What is a VMS?
Great. So what is a VMS? The VMS is a vendor management system, which is like a web or cloud-based software application that allows you to manage your company's entire contingent workforce hiring process in one easy-to-use solution. The VMS is used by a company directly to manage their independent talent pool to better manage and optimize their temporary workforce. By acting as a mechanism for the business to manage and procure contingent workers, the VMS automates and streamlines communication and data for contingent workforce program. It also automates every step associated with the opening of the rec, sourcing, candidate submissions, managing the day-to-day of the assignment, including onboarding, offboarding, paying of temporary workers, billing, and invoicing to the business. The VMS tools also provide real-time analytics, including budgets, vendor performances, as Kyle mentioned previously, and stores and collects data from your contingent worker hiring process and collates metrics such as spend tracking, candidate information, payroll and invoice data, and end-to-end procurement. The VMS tool also helps reduce costs of operations and creates hiring efficiencies and consistencies.
Our final poll question. According to the 2021 SIA Workforce Solutions Buyer Survey, what percentage of companies with an MSP currently have a VMS in place?
So the answer is 85%, and the 2021 Staffing Industry Analyst Workforce Solutions Buyer Survey found that 85% of the responding 105 companies with 1,000 or more employees have a VMS in place. An additional 13% said that they would seriously explore the technology within 2 years. While smaller companies may be slower to adopt, the technology still plays a pivotal role. No matter which technology provider is the best match for your organization, a VMS provides tremendous business value. Selecting one can feel overwhelming. From a user perspective, the VMS is often the connection between your company, suppliers, and contingent workers, so it must provide an easy-to-use, positive experience.
What costs are associated with implementing an MSP and/or a VMS?
So typically we see two different funding models to support the MSP VMS solution, a vendor-funded model and a client-funded model. And as the name would suggest, a vendor-funded model is an ecosystem in which the suppliers participating in the program offset the cost associated with the technology and the administration of that technology through a small service fee. A client-funded model is one wherein the client has elected to absorb those costs and there is no cost that's passed through to the suppliers. Far and away the most popular, most common is a vendor-funded model. One of the things to keep in mind too is regardless of the funding model, vendor or client funded, doesn't impact whether or not it's a vendor neutral, vendor preferred, or vendor tiered, as Tyler was sharing with us a little bit earlier. That is completely incumbent upon the solution and what works best for you. Now, in an anecdotal sense, there really is not a lot that should require budget consideration when implementing a solution for you, the client, for you, the company. There are some soft costs attached, which is where you guys incur a little bit of the impact. And on the next slide, we will go ahead and see that there are the stakeholders. So what this outlines here is really what you'll notice is there's a minimal time commitment from the client perspective compared to what the MSP and the VMS are putting together. A lot of heavy lifting is done up front. One of the things that's very essential when you're evaluating an MSP partner or solution is to ensure that they have a proven implementation plan. The implementation plan is critical. It allows us to identify where there might be concurrent opportunities to implement the solution. It also could be where we see resource drain. So we want to be very cognizant of that. When we begin an implementation process, we have a dedicated project management office that is aligned within your organization as well as with the VMS to ensure that we are all on the same page, that we're hitting deliverables along the way. One piece of advice that we always suggest is that to ensure the adoption of the program internally, wherein you'll get the benefits of the solution more rapidly, is we need to make sure that we have executive sponsorship and know where that lines up. So for example, if the reason for implementing the solution is more finance-based, you might logically see the executive sponsor being through the CFO. If the objective and primary focus of implementing the solution is more talent-related, you would likely see this roll up under the CHRO and ultimately to the president in that regard. Once the process begins, and this is where kind of some of the soft costs are. Now, implementation, how long does it take? It really varies on the scope of the program. We've done rapid implementations that are fairly succinct. Usually that's in a phased approach where we first want to gain optics on the program and then slowly implement the benefits of the VMS. And they can take much longer too if we're going to be much broader in terms of what we include in the solution. For us, what's very essential though is what we call hypercare. Now, hypercare is the phase in which your client, your hiring managers, start to get their voice heard, and they start to put fingerprints on how the solution is going to be implemented. Again, this translates directly into the increase of adaptability internally. And what we often hear during this process from hiring managers is frustration, specifically dealing with staffing vendors, is the management of candidates, evaluating the talent that's submitted, doing the interview process, and all the way through. Obviously, that's a benefit, as Kelly had shared with us earlier. One of the benefits of having an MSP is that candidate management process that's consistent to ensure a positive experience from the candidate and proper representation of your brand. The other thing that we often hear too is quality. Obviously, we want to see better quality candidates. I think every organization probably has the same request. By having a larger vendor pool, as Kyle had mentioned, we're able to engage vendors that have proven themselves on other solutions. We also want to work closely with the existing vendors on the program to be able to ensure that they have an opportunity to be successful. So when it comes down to the scope of the program, one of the things to keep in mind is when we talk about contingent workforce, it has changed tremendously. So the optics now isn't just temporary employees or independent contractors or corp to corp or consultants. It continues to expand.
What contingent workforce strategies can an MSP provide?
Yeah, so when I was first introduced to the industry, the utilization of temporary employees was really short term. It was more project based, or to fill in when somebody may have been out ill. But that is really evolving into becoming a much more strategic component of your organization's growth and ultimately achieving the goals that you set for yourself. A lot of organizations that use a large number of consultants, independent contractors, and temporaries, this workforce has an impact not only on your bottom line, but on the culture as well. So when we implement the solution, what we want to do is really understand clearly, how can we best integrate this workforce with your internal, i.e., how do we ensure that the objectives you've laid out for your internal group and your organization has set out is also including the temporary workforce. We're seeing a movement now towards a real big push for more data. So reporting for EEOC requirements, and then more in particular, organizations have taken the initiative now to maybe do beyond that. So rather than the contractual requirements that have been laid out to meet certain requirements, companies are wanting to do a little bit more. So they're wanting to increase that. Your MSP partner is a great conduit to be able to help facilitate that. Should not be viewed as an adversary, should not be viewed as a one-off. This is an extension of your group. And in many cases, the influence, these folks in your contingent workforce will ultimately become part of your internal workforce. And we want to ensure that that transition is complete. Supplier diversity, equity, and inclusion is really kind of what we're seeing emerge huge right now, with organizations really wanting to be more inclusive in their interviewing process and their sourcing process to ensure that everybody's being considered. And ultimately for the technology side, the VMS, once that's implemented, it gives you optics into critical data that you need really in managing your workforce. The technology gives you screenshots, flash reporting, but the ability to rapidly understand where candidates are at in the process and how vendors are performing. Kyle mentioned about the supplier portal. We really feel that having a great relationships with our suppliers is essential. And so the technology applications have a vendor portal where the suppliers actually can go in, they can update their information, they can look at the billing, they have access to a tremendous amount of data. If we envision the VMS as being a three-sided kind of a triangle, each one of those sides needs to have optics into that data, and the suppliers are critical for that part of the success. Along those lines, a little bit tangential is supplier diversity. Supplier diversity continues to increase in terms of our partnering with clients. They want to see more diverse suppliers. Again, diverse suppliers are those businesses that have been historically underutilized. Here in California, the Public Utilities Commission has identified women-owned, minority-owned, and veteran-owned entities as being a priority. They have since now added LGBTQ, and now we'll be tracking spend in that category. And this is an area where we can help enable our clients in their sales process. Oftentimes, our clients will be pursuing government contracts where there might be a requirement or set aside to include diverse suppliers. We take a great deal of pride in being able to do that. We have a mentoring relationship with a couple of diverse suppliers in an effort to ensure that they get to the next level. But the workforce tracking and data portal is really important and should be viewed as a valuable tool, again, to integrate your workforce and the temporary workforce. And one of the things, obviously, COVID taught us a lot of things, certainly as businesses, business owners, and employers. But COVID really expedited quickly the necessity for us to have optics on everybody that's in a physical environment. The health and welfare, environmental health and safety became essential. And things were moving so fast with tracking, tracing, reporting, that the first thing we all needed to do was to understand who's in our environment, who were we responsible for. And the optics provided by the VMS and the MSP on that part of your workforce, the contingent workforce, temporary employees, independent contractors, consultants, corp to corp, whatever you deem as part of your contingent workforce, Being able to have optics in that will quickly understand exactly who is doing what. Along those lines, the things that kind of translated legislatively, and these are just a couple of examples of things that have emerged. Previously, reporting would typically be bifurcated with client data and temporary staffing data, and that was reported separately. Now what we're seeing with the most recent evolution of 1162 is that the data being required and submitted as of May of next year must require that the client companies report their contingent staff, inclusive of consultants, independent contractors, temporary employees, etc. So this is going to be more and more of one of those administrative responsibilities and functions that outside of trying to find talent, you are now going to be required to provide to the government. Some of the other elements that we've seen emerge with regard to the compensation, overtime pay, minimum wage, and then of course, COVID layoffs and providing, this is related to hospitality, but individuals who were laid off as a result of COVID now receive a priority when positions reopen they may be qualified for. So these are all those external factors that sometimes have a long leeway that we can prepare for and oftentimes must be rapidly responded to in the case of COVID. And the optics that are provided through an MSP solution give you the tools and the wherewithal and the ability to be able to quickly react and meet all those compliance requirements.
All right, now we are on to some questions. We did receive some direct questions to my chat. If you have any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or direct message myself. The first one we have is, what's the time commitment on our end during implementation phase? Tyler, did you want to take that one?
Sure, I can speak to that. Time commitment. So that's a great question, right? You're going to take on this huge project. For how much time is it going to take? There's soft costs associated with that. So thinking back to the key stakeholders slide that I think Michael was presenting on, there were different parties involved, sponsors, executive stakeholders, subject matter experts, et cetera. Each participant is going to have a different time commitment, but obviously, if this is coming from like an HRTA standpoint or a procurement, you're going to have the biggest time commitment there. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So down there on the bottom, you can kind of see the different percentages of everybody involved. And in general, you can expect about 8 to 12 weeks of implementation, and that's having a strong client program manager, so that blue circle down there. And that's going to be important because you're going to be the one driving and holding the other pieces of blue in the circles there accountable to getting you those data points. And one, I guess there's one piece of advice I can give to anybody looking to implement an MSP. Having your internal data organized is going to get you the upper hand and be advantaged much more. A lot of times we'll go in and we have these workbooks that we're asking for foundational data, and you're scrambling to get information from different departments and finding information, creating information that we can report on. So just trying to head into implementation with organized data is really going to help you out. But again, 8 to 12 weeks, I would say is a good budget on the later end of that if you're not so organized. But we have done quicker implementations as well. So I hate to give that like it really depends answer, but it really does depend on your organization of your data and your employees internally.
Thank you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Our next question is, vendor and client funded models were mentioned. Are there any alternative pricing models?
Yes. So far and away, and without having my SIA statistics in front of me, I would venture to guess that 95% of programs fall within one of those two models. But some of the other models that we've seen and been involved with would be charging a flat fee for the per hour or per week for managing the headcount through the MSP. So a rough example would be if it's a 3% management fee that's being assessed for the technology and the service or the administration, $100 an hour person, that administration fee would be $3. For somebody making $20 an hour, it would be 60 cents. Clearly, from an administration standpoint and technology, the cost delta there doesn't cost that much more to cut a check for somebody that's more highly comped. So we have found solutions where we just charge a flat hourly fee on top of the rate, regardless of what the pay rate is, to ensure that there's uniformity and consistency. That's been a big benefit. We've also seen where some clients have elected to absorb the costs related to the MSP team. So what they want to do is to ensure that their clients, the hiring managers, have a level of high level of service. So they will actually want us to hire the team, and then we build that back to them. And in that regard, the reward structure can be focused in on SLAs or KPIs. How are we performing as an MSP, and what's the reward structure? So those are kind of two. What we've also seen, kind of going back a little bit to the COVID experience, is headcount. Some companies maybe are not quite prepared to do a full-blown MSP implementation, but they've elected to say, I want optics on everybody that's here. So we've seen solutions focused on what we call headcount tracking, where there's just a flat monthly fee to manage each head, and understanding where folks are at. And this is a global opportunity where we can track folks. So at the push of a button, as the strategic leader of your group, can understand exactly what number of people you have where. So those are just a couple of different options that helps to kind of allay the costs.
Thank you, Michael. I have two more questions to go through unless anyone else has one. Our next one is, how many existing vendors usually participate in a new program?
I can take that call or that question. Usually we have about a 95% adoption rate for new program launches. I mean, obviously we will be working with a lot of those vendors, and it doesn't mean that, and we're not going to partner with them to make sure that the contract works for them and whatever else. As Kyle mentioned, there are some red lines that we have had with some vendors and whatnot, but we do have, like I mentioned, over a 95% adoption rate for existing vendors part of the program.
Great, thank you, Kelly. All right, our last question we have is, we currently have an MSP in place. Can we utilize Suna to meet our diversity spend requirements?
So diversity is a huge component. What we on the Suna side, since we are not a diverse supplier, where we're able to empower our solutions is by engaging diverse suppliers within the network. One of my first experiences in the industry was working with the Public Utilities Commission, where there was a strong emphasis put on the engagement of historically underutilized businesses. And that's how we were incented and rewarded. Along the way, there are a variety of things that we discovered, that a lot of small firms maybe don't have quite the financial resources to be able to support a large organization in terms of insurance requirements, carrying the accounts receivable. Sometimes their technology is a little bit limited. The resources available to recruit sometimes can also make them a little bit less competitive against some of the bigger players. So what we do is we have a mentor-protege relationship with an LGBTQ company here in San Diego. And it's been a fantastic experience to learn and understand where they can bring greater value. So we always coach and advise that they should find a vertical in which they do particularly well in, and start from there, and then we can launch and expand from there. We also work closely with a woman-owned business here in Southern California that helps to support our programs as well. So there are a variety of different ways, and another component of that is there are some industries wherein the payment to an MSP and then ultimately to a diverse supplier cannot necessarily be reported back. So we have engagements where the client pays those diverse suppliers direct to ensure that we're meeting the compliance requirements and that the client is paying those diverse suppliers. But there are a variety of different options here. I think it goes back to the stakeholder slide we were looking at, is understanding where that executive sponsorship lies to ensure that the internal staff understands the goals and has buy-in on the process. But supplier diversity, I think, is something that we're going to continue to see more and more inclusion on. And as I mentioned before, too, for our clients, a lot of the contracts that they're pursuing have set-asides or requirements to include diverse suppliers. And that's what we like to partner on. We can enable your sales solution by providing a very highly qualified group of diverse suppliers. Hope that answers that.
Thank you, Michael. Did anyone else have any other questions? All right, well, thank you everyone for attending our MSP webinar. I will send a follow-up email with the recording as well as a copy of our MSP ebook definitive guide. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on the number provided. Follow us on social, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.